had been together for over 30 years. Their marriage had weathered the storms of raising children, career changes, and the inevitable ups and downs of life. At 55, they were finally at a stage where they could slow down, travel more, and enjoy the golden years they had dreamed of. But then came the diagnosis. Linda had always been energetic. She loved gardening, taking long walks, and spending time with their grandchildren. So when she started feeling constantly fatigued, her joints aching every morning, she assumed it was just part of aging. But the fatigue didn't go away. The pain worsened, and after months of doctor visits, the answer finally came. Rheumatoid arthritis, a chronic illness, a lifelong condition. At first, they were both in denial. "This can't be happening," Linda whispered to Mark one night. "I don't want to be a burden to you." Mark took her hand in his voice firm but gentle. "We said our vows, didn't we? In sickness and in health. We're in this together." But saying it was one thing, living it was another. Mark quickly realized that chronic illness didn't just affect Linda. It affected both of them. Simple things they used to do together, like their Saturday morning hikes or long road trips, became difficult, sometimes impossible. Linda's bad days were unpredictable. Some mornings she couldn't even get out of bed without help. Mark struggled too. He wanted to be supportive, but he was frustrated. He missed the active life they had shared. And though he hated to admit it, he was scared. Scared of what the future held. Scared of watching the woman he loved in pain. One night, after a particularly difficult day, Mark found himself sitting alone in the living room staring at their wedding photo on the wall. He felt helpless. He knew he had to make a choice. Either let this illness define their marriage or find a way to adapt. Mark decided to learn everything he could about Linda's condition. He read books, joined support groups, and even attended doctor's appointments with her. He discovered that while they couldn't change the diagnosis, they could change how they faced it. Instead of focusing on what they couldn't do, they started finding new things they could enjoy together. Instead of hiking, they took scenic drives and found quiet spots to have picnics. Instead of cooking elaborate meals, Mark learned simple, nutritious recipes that were easier on Linda's joints. Instead of large social gatherings that drained Linda's energy, they embraced smaller, intimate moments, watching old movies, listening to music, and simply enjoying each other's company. Most importantly, Mark learned to listen, not just to Linda's words, but to her needs. He realized that sometimes she didn't need him to fix things. She just needed him to be there, to hold her hand, to remind her that she wasn't alone. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, Linda turned to Mark and said, "I know this isn't the life we planned, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. Thank you for not giving up on me." Mark smiled, squeezing her hand. "It's not about giving up, Linda. It's about finding new ways to hold on." Their journey wasn't easy, but they faced it together. And in the end, that's what love is. Choosing each other every single day, no matter what life brings. For any couple going through something similar, Mark and Linda's story is a reminder. Love isn't just about the good times. It's about standing by each other when things get tough, learning to adapt, and finding joy in the moments that truly matter. Mark and Linda had been together for over 30 years. Their marriage had weathered the storms of raising children, career changes, financial ups and downs, and the inevitable challenges that come with time. At 55, They were looking forward to the next phase of life. Their children were grown and independent. Their mortgage was finally paid off, and retirement was on the horizon. They had dreams, traveling to Europe, spending lazy mornings together on the porch, and watching their grandchildren grow. Life was supposed to get easier, but life, as they learned, doesn't always go as planned. It started subtly. Linda, who had always been full of energy, found herself exhausted more often than usual. Her joints ached, especially in the mornings. At first, she brushed it off as aging. "Maybe I'm just not as young as I used to be," she would joke. But soon, the stiffness wouldn't go away. She struggled to do simple things she once enjoyed, kneading dough for her homemade bread, tending to her flower garden, even buttoning her blouse. After months of tests and doctor visits, the diagnosis came: rheumatoid arthritis, a chronic autoimmune disease. There was no cure, only management. That night, Linda sat in their bedroom staring at her reflection in the mirror. "I don't want to be a burden to you, Mark," she whispered. Mark, who had been silent, walked over and wrapped his arms around her. "You're not a burden, Linda. We're in this together." But he had no idea what together really meant until the reality of their new life started settling in. At first, they both resisted change. Linda tried to push through, refusing to slow down. "I can still do it," she insisted, even when her hands trembled as she held a coffee mug. Mark, on the other hand, didn't fully grasp how much their daily lives would change. He would still plan long weekend trips, not realizing how draining they would be for Linda. He would get frustrated when she canceled plans last minute because she was having a flare-up. The hardest part wasn't just the physical limitations. It was the unpredictability. Some days, Linda felt almost normal. Other days, she could barely move. And Mark, he wasn't just Linda's husband anymore. He was becoming her caretaker. That shift was hard. One evening, after a particularly difficult day, Mark sat in his car in the driveway, gripping the steering wheel. He felt guilty for even thinking it, but he missed their old life. He missed the woman who would dance with him in the kitchen, who would race him to the car in the rain. And he was terrified of what the future would look like. Would Linda get worse? Would she be in pain for the rest of her life? Would they ever feel normal again? But as time went on, Mark realized he had two choices. He could grieve what was lost and let the illness create distance between them, or he could learn to adapt and find new ways to connect. He chose the latter. Mark started educating himself about rheumatoid arthritis. He read articles, joined online support groups for spouses of people with chronic illnesses, and even attended Linda's doctor's appointments with her. He learned that supporting Linda wasn't just about helping her physically. It was about understanding her emotionally. He learned to read her signals. When she needed help, he offered it without making her feel weak. When she needed space, he respected it. And they found new ways to enjoy life. Instead of their usual hiking trips, they took scenic drives to quiet lakes where they could sit and talk. Instead of large social gatherings that drained Linda's energy, they started having intimate dinners with close friends at home. Instead of Mark expecting Linda to handle the household chores as she always had, he learned how to cook simple meals that wouldn't strain her joints. Most importantly, Mark learned that Linda didn't always need him to fix things. Sometimes, she just needed him to listen, but adaptation didn't mean it was easy. Mark struggled in ways he didn't expect. He worried constantly about Linda's health, about their finances with increasing medical bills, about whether he was doing enough. And then there was the resentment. He hated admitting it, but some days he felt trapped. He missed the freedom of their old life. He missed being able to plan things without worrying about whether Linda would be in too much pain. He missed the woman she used to be. One night, during a particularly tough argument, Linda looked at him with tears in her eyes and said, "You didn't sign up for this, did you?" Mark sighed, rubbing his temples. "Neither did you, Linda." That moment was a turning point, because the truth was, they were both grieving. Linda wasn't just dealing with pain. She was mourning the loss of independence. She hated that she couldn't be the wife she once was. She hated that Mark had to adjust his life because of her. That night, they sat together in silence, holding hands. No words were needed. They just understood. Over time, they stopped comparing their life to what it used to be and started embracing what they had. They laughed more, even on the bad days. Mark would crack jokes when Linda struggled to open a jar, saying, "Guess it's time I finally start feeling useful around here." Linda, in turn, would tease him about his graying hair. "I might be the one with the illness, but you're the one aging faster." They learned that love wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, Linda turned to Mark and whispered, "I know this isn't the life we planned, but I wouldn't trade it for anything." Mark smiled, squeezing her hand. "It's not about what we planned, Linda. It's about what we make of it. And that's what marriage is. Not just sharing the good times, but choosing each other every single day, no matter what life brings."